Welcome back, guys, to the second part of this navigation system upgrade in the R60 Mini Cooper. If you guys missed the very first part of this series, all I essentially did was I did an unveiling of the product here, showed you guys what was included in the package, and today's part is going to be the DIY. Now, I will give you guys some heads up. This part of the DIY is not going to be for everybody. In my research to find videos on how to properly do it in the Countryman, I did not run into a whole lot of DIYs. I wanted to go ahead and thank fellow YouTuber Let's Drive as well as William Camacho for spending the hours that they did to put together some DIYs for people to follow. Now, Let's Drive's YouTube video was very intensive. He pretty much ripped the entire front panel apart to get to the radio and to replace a few things. Now, for William Camacho, he also took an extensive amount of time to actually document by photos as well as writing step-by-step guides as to what you need to do. So I will include those below for you guys to take a look at, and all I am essentially doing is taking that information that I found through their videos and putting together something that's going to be a little easier for people who are visually stimulated with videos, so you guys can follow this. So huge applaud to the both of you for putting together something like this. Now, this again is not going to be a very easy project to do. It's pretty straightforward, but you do have to remove a fair amount of panels from the Mini Countryman. For one, you have to get the Mickey Mouse ears off. You have to get the main bezel that holds the radio off. Then there's going to be side bezels that you have to remove, and in order to access those, you have to remove the glove box as well as the driver's side kick panel. And on top of that, there's going to be a little, I believe they call it a coin tray from underneath that you have to remove. So again, lots of things to remove to actually be able to pull out the radio. Now, I'm going to take this a step even further. What I plan to do is I'm going to be running a dual channel video so I can have reverse backup, and I'm actually going to install a front mounting camera on the lower end of my front bumper or grill so that I can see if I'm going to be hitting something in the front when I'm parking, because later on I do plan to add a spoiler in the front, and that's going to help out. So why not kind of do all of that since we're going to have the Mini Cooper apart. So if you guys are ready for this DIY, let's go ahead and get to it. So we are in the car, and I wanted to briefly run over some things that you have to install that I was referring to. So you have to pull off the Mickey Mouse ears here. There is going to be a sensor back here that you have to remove. There are two side pieces you have to remove. There is going to be the glove box here that you have to drop down and remove. Here is the kick panel for the driver's side that you have to remove as well. And then down below here, you're going to see the coin holder, and I believe you may have to remove the cup holders. And that's all to actually be able to remove this whole center component here, and that allows you to get this out. So again, from the videos that I saw, this whole component is one piece, so you can't just take it apart. You have to literally remove everything to get to the bolts that's behind here. So to start out, we're gonna go ahead and remove the Mickey Mouse panel here, and as you guys can tell, I essentially did pop out some of these. A good starting point is if you look down here, Up here it's very tight and it's hard to get a trim removal tool in there. So what I did was I found a little slot that was a little larger, and I stuck my tool in here and pried out. That gave my fingers just enough so that I can slowly start pulling it apart. Now, you want to take your time. You're going to hear a lot of cracking. Don't worry about it. You're not breaking anything. It's just some of these clips that are coming off. So be very careful as you pull out, because you do have the hazard button that you want to disengage here. So don't let it fall, but we'll slowly pop it out. And that piece is off. And then what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to undo this clip here. Now, the next part, we are removing this air vent cover. And the way that you want to do it is you first want to remove the sensor here. The best thing to do is to essentially put a screwdriver in one of these vents that you're able to reach the sensor, and just essentially push on up, and then you're able to essentially pry from the side here to get this up. Now once you are able to get it up, you'll see there's going to be 3 tabs here, 2 here, and it's going to be held in by a T20 star bit. So make sure that you remove that little bit there, and you're able to at that point disconnect this from that little sensor. But this is essentially what it's going to look like, and I'm going to go ahead and put this piece aside. Now what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to remove this upper trim here, and it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's 5 bits that you have to remove. And let's take a look here. Those are also going to be T20, so we'll go ahead and remove those and set those aside. With those 5 bolts removed, I was able to loosen this here. So you're going to loosen this, and then the next step is you want to remove these side panels here. And again, you want to find a little spot that is open, and then just pull these right off. The next thing that I did was I went ahead and removed the 2 screws underneath the cup holder pads here. That allows me to pull the cup holder up a little bit, and then there's going to be 1 screw that is holding down the coin tray. Now the thing about the coin tray, once you're able to loosen that bolt and remove it, you do not want to at this point pull out that coin tray, because there is a wire or some type of sensor that is connected that I'll get to in a little bit. But everything at this point with the screws has been a T20. So go ahead and remove those, and we'll proceed with the next part. The next part of the install is we remove the driver's side kick panel. There's actually going to be 3 T20s that you want to remove, and essentially you can pull this panel out just like I did. Now keep in mind, there's going to be a ribbon cable right here that is attached to the start button. You want to be very careful when you remove it. There's a couple of tabs that you push, and you'll be able to essentially pull it out from here. So the choice is you could either leave it dangling just like this, or you can pull this out. But since this is a ribbon style, let's take a look here, a ribbon style connector, I do not want to damage it, because if you do, you're not going to be able to start your car. Now what I've done is I went ahead and removed the 3 screws on top that hold the glove box in. You are going to have to remove the side paneling here that shows the fuse box, as well as the side. There's going to be a 4th bolt that's inside here that essentially holds the complete top of the glove box in. So go ahead and remove that. And there is going to be 1 side panel on the very bottom here with 3 screws that you remove as well. So I have removed that, and from here we're going to slightly remove the glove box forward to access a couple of additional screws in the back. Okay, so we were able to successfully remove this glove box, and I'm going to change a couple of things. There are essentially 4 bolts on top. You've got a couple underneath that hold the glove box in, and there's actually 2 inside of essentially underneath and inside the glove box that holds it in. Now this piece here is going to be your airbag, so you want to be very careful. If you take a look here, I essentially just disconnected this from the glove box. It came out relatively easy, and there's going to be clips here that go underneath the glove box. You can pry those down a little bit without touching the airbag, and from there you're able to access these 2 T30s that are back here. But I'll take a couple pictures as best as I can. You just want to take your time. My recommendation is to not remove, or you can loosely remove the top of the glove box, but don't completely undo these bolts here, because then you have nothing that really supports it. But we were able to successfully get that out. Now we have access to these bolts here that holds this entire panel. So we got the bolts that hold these in here, and this essentially just came right out. So that was a whole lot of work just to get to, it looks like there's either 2 or 4 bolts that hold this in. You've got 2 additional ones that will hold this trim piece here, and once we remove it, we'll have access to this here. So we have done pretty much all the hard stuff right now to get just to the radial. So let's go ahead and proceed to the next process. Now what I went ahead and did was I removed 1, 2, 3 that holds this in, and then there's 2 that actually will hold the CD in. So we're essentially just going to pull it out. I can feel a little resistance, and that's going to be from the cable in the back. So we'll go ahead and slowly take it out. And you want to be careful because this is one complete unit. Let me go ahead and try to figure how to get this a little further out here so I can have some room. The next part of this process is trying to access the very back for the rear reverse camera. So this little pocket right here is how you access the rear tail lamp. And all I did was I pulled this off, and then from here we can essentially push this here to remove this. And I can't do it because I'm holding the camera in one hand, but you can disconnect this. From the inside, you're going to have 2 of these type of bolts here that hold the assembly in. It's an 8mm, so you can go ahead and remove it. And from here, we're going to go ahead and just kind of come on out. We'll be able to pull this off so that we can run the cabling down underneath into the bumper and over to where the dash cam reverse camera is actually going to sit. So I'll take some time to do that real quick for you guys, and then I'll show you. Here is the rear tail light removed, and you can actually see, and I'll stand correct, there was 4 bolts that hold this thing in, and it looks like they're just simply brackets that do something like that hold it into the car. So again, 4 bolts. Here is my rear reverse camera that I'm going to use. I have one of these as well in the front, and I'm still deciding on whether I want to do it. It looks like it's a little difficult to access through the firewall, but again, this is going to be the rear reverse one. what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to find a bit that's relatively close. We'll drill this a hole through the bumper and then get this reverse camera mounted and tested out. For the camera part, you guys will see that I went ahead and drilled into the bumper and mounted this camera. It was easily accessible from underneath so that I can go ahead and actually tighten it. So there you see the camera, and we're gonna go ahead and make our way up here. I ran the cabling through after drilling just a small hole right over here that allowed me to pull the wiring through. So now I can actually hook it up to the rear tail light, reverse light here, and then run the cabling all the way up through to the very front. So from here, what I did was I had to run the video cable from the very back out to the very front, and all I essentially did was I connected two large zip ties together. I taped the end of the wire, I pushed it through, and it's going up to about right up here. We'll walk around. And then you guys will see that it's coming out from here. I removed the weather stripping from this door, and what we're going to do is we're going to run the cable all the way down through here. Right through such. Walk around over here. And this door, I also removed the cable and the weather stripping, as well as the panel that went right here. So from here, I'll be able to run my reverse all the way up. So we have come to the step where we are going to start doing some of the wiring installation. As you can see, I have the brain unit up here. And this cable that you see is going to be for the USB, where I will attach the Android Auto and CarPlay dongle. I have actually put my GPS sending unit or unit right up here underneath that little round spot here. And this is going to be for the GPS antenna hookup. And all I did with the extra is I just zip tied it and firmly taped it in here. I don't think it's going to fall out anywhere. And then let's show you guys the CD control mechanism. What I've done here is I have zip tied everything together so that anything that I don't use, I went ahead and just put together. So the main plugs here, this is going to be the ones that goes to the brains itself. You have your reverse video input. Here is the main harness that goes to the car. And then here's another one that's going to go to the brains. And I'm going to go ahead and hook up this purple wire to the reverse sensor that came from my rear camera. So let's go ahead and put some things together, and I'll show you guys how it looks at that point. So I ran into a little situation. This is the bus connection that shows all of the information to your car, such as the seat belt, your gas gauge, etc., that connects to the back of the unit. Unfortunately, this is going to be too short, and I'm going to have to modify this. So I went ahead and bought some extra cabling, and I'm going to have to splice in here to extend it out probably about 3 inches or so, just to give myself enough room. But that is a little disappointment that I have to modify this original connector here. Alright guys, so I finished modifying my bus line here. What I did was I essentially soldered longer lines in there, and then I shrink wrapped it, and then you can tell I flex loomed it just to be a little OCD. But I tested it, it works perfectly fine, and now I don't have to worry about stretching this cable anymore. So we'll go ahead and start putting things back together. So we have the lower CD and DVD controller mounted here, and all I did was I ran the cables on up through here so that it could actually access this unit here when we put it in. So everything is neatly done. What I went ahead and did is I put the speaker up here. I've got the GPS antenna up here, and I just routed it through an opening here. I taped all the excessive GPS line here very securely. I zip tied it so it's not going to go anywhere. And then I've got pretty much everything that I need here. Here is going to be your speaker wire that goes to the head unit. This is going to be your GPS antenna. This is your bus line. You've got your USB cable. And then these are all going to be the connections from the controller up to the head unit here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together, and I will install it and let you guys see what it looks like in just a little bit. So we have the unit in. I went ahead and put the brain controller in. Here is the CD DVD controller, and it's all in. Everything tucked out very well inside. These wires are going to be to the other stuff, but just wanted to kind of give you guys a look at what it does look right now. So what I'll go ahead and do at this point is I'm going to start putting together some of the panels that I removed, and then we'll go ahead and just do a quick review of the product. So we got the unit in, and you guys can see how it looks. It looks pretty good. I'm not going to cover the functionality of the unit right now. I'm saving that for once I have everything finalized. I could do another video for you guys to see, because that's going to be a whole new task for you guys to take a look at. So everything looks pretty good at this point. What I'll go ahead and do is I'm going to reinstall everything and see how it goes at that point. But this is kind of what the unit looks like prior to it being finalized with the install. So we are done with the Android head unit upgrade in the Mini Cooper, and I wanted to kind of go over some final thoughts with you guys to hopefully help you succeed in this installation. Now, overall, the project in itself, it isn't too difficult. More than anything else, it's just very tedious because you do have to remove quite a few things just to get to the radio. In short, you have to remove the top bezels, and then you've got to remove the side bezels. You have to remove the driver's side kick panel, and then you've got to remove the glove box. That allows you to finally get to the inner pieces of the bezels that actually hold the radio. So again, not a terribly difficult job to do, but it's a little time consuming and very tedious to accomplish. Some of the things that I would recommend that you do is have a fair amount of tools on your hands, specifically some prying tools to get the panels off, and you're going to need some torque bit drives to help you remove those bolts. Once you start removing the glove box, you do want to be very careful, because there is going to be a lower kick panel airbag that you don't want to deploy by accident. There's going to be a lower piece that you actually have to wedge out from that glove box to remove it. But just take your time. You should be perfectly fine to remove that glove box. Now, the reinstallation of everything is essentially going to be the opposite of removing everything. What I essentially did was I put the radio or the CD controller portion in first, ran the wires out through the top of it, and then I went ahead and put the main dash, the Navi dash in itself, in, and then just essentially wired all of that. I got all of the bezels on top in. I've got the driver's panel in. I got the side pieces in, and then that essentially left me the glove box. And I just, again, took my time in kind of wedging it in, making sure it stayed in, bolted the bolts in, and then I was able to get underneath to get the bolts to the bottom. And finally, you get the side trim pieces of the door back in, and then you want to go ahead and put that weather stripping back in as well. Now, for the part of the backup camera, that was not too difficult at all. In comparison to removing the radio, far easier to do. If you are looking at the tail light assembly, there's going to be 4 bolts to remove. It essentially goes, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and when you are removing or loosening the bolts, I recommend that you loosen number 2, 3, and 4, whereas 1, you just essentially want to loosen it, and once you have the 2, 3, and 4 bolts removed, that headlight assembly, or I'm sorry, the tail light assembly is going to come out relatively easy, because it doesn't bolt into some type of hole. It's actually a locking mechanism that puts pressure on the vehicle chassis on the 4 points to hold that tail light assembly in. Now, when you are replacing it, again, what I'd recommend that you do is number 1 bolt, you want to tighten it. Don't tighten it too much, but just tighten it. Leave number 2, 3, and 4 in. Don't tighten them too much, and then you're going to wedge the tail lamp in, and then go ahead and tighten number 2, 3, and 4. Once those are tightened, you can go in and tighten number 4. That whole process took me quite a bit of time to figure it out, because I had to remove all 4 bolts. Once I got it back in, it just, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't tighten it. I would do one end and the whole assembly was still pulling out. So I figured, okay, I've got to tighten this one. I kind of slide it in and then slowly do the other one. So that should definitely help you guys. Now, for the camera that I used, I unfortunately would not recommend that specific camera because of the angle that it is designed. I initially put the camera underneath or above my license plate, and I didn't like how it looked, and I couldn't access the screw on the very top to tighten it. So what I did was I just put it on the lower portion of the bumper, and that allowed me more space to actually tighten it from the back. But the problem is, because the camera faces down so much, I see more of the ground than anything else. That camera in itself, it came with some wedges, but they're garbage. Unfortunately, they just didn't work. They're rubber, they didn't hold well, the holes were not drilled properly, so I just do not recommend that camera. Since I had already purchased it, I went ahead and used it anyways. I still am able to see a fair amount of the things that I am backing up in. Again, the only thing I don't like is I see a lot of ground. But it is what it is. It does its job. I'm happy that I'm able to see in the back of the car when I am reversing. So not too bad. Again, it is what it is, guys, and I'll let you kind of decide what camera you would like to install. Just make sure that you're able to adjust it somehow where you can turn the viewing angle up or down, whatever you choose. As usual, guys, I wanted to thank you so much for supporting my channel and watching another DIY. I know this one is going to be a little long, so hopefully you stuck it through and that it helps you remove your radio as safely and as quickly as you can. Now, for the review of the navigation setup, I'm going to reserve that for the very next video. So hopefully you guys will follow along with this series. Until the very next review video that I do for the Android unit, take care, and I'll see you then, guys.